What if everything you've been taught about risk is backwards? From the day we're old enough to understand money, we're told to play it safe. Get a secure job. Save what you can. Avoid taking chances. Because risk, we're told, is dangerous. But what if avoiding risk is actually the biggest risk of all? The world's wealthiest entrepreneurs don't wake up looking for danger. In fact, many of them spend their lives trying to avoid unnecessary risk. Yet somehow, they continue building companies worth millions and sometimes billions of dollars. So what do they see that everyone else misses? The answer isn't more courage, it isn't better luck. And it certainly isn't magic, it's something far more powerful. They've completely changed the way they define risk. While most people ask, what if I fail? The ultra-wealthy ask, what if I never try? That single question has changed businesses, industries, and fortunes throughout history. In today's documentary, we'll uncover the psychology behind calculated risk, why the wealthy make decisions that seem irrational to everyone else, and how a simple shift in thinking can completely change the way you see money, opportunity, and success. Because once you understand how the ultra-wealthy think about risk, you'll never look at opportunity the same way again. Before we go any further, I want to ask you something. If you're serious about understanding how wealth is really built, not through shortcuts, but through timeless business principles and financial psychology, make sure you subscribe to Land and Wealth Stories. Every week, we uncover the untold strategies, decisions, and mindset shifts behind extraordinary businesses and self-made fortunes. Now, let's continue. Most people believe risk is something to avoid. It's a lesson we learn early in life. Choose the safe career. Keep a steady paycheck. Don't take unnecessary chances. On the surface, it sounds like good advice. After all, nobody wants to lose their savings, their job, or everything they've worked for. But here's the question almost nobody asks. What if playing it safe carries its own risks? History is filled with people who did everything they were told. They worked hard, saved money, avoided uncertainty. Yet decades later, many found themselves financially stuck. Not because they lacked intelligence, not because they didn't work hard, but because they misunderstood what risk really is. The ultra-wealthy don't see risk as something to eliminate. They see it as something to understand. There's a huge difference. To most people, starting a business feels risky. Investing feels risky. Learning a new skill feels risky. Changing careers feels risky. But remaining in the exact same financial position for the next 20 years often doesn't feel risky at all. And that's where the biggest misunderstanding begins. The world's most successful entrepreneurs rarely ask, how can I avoid risk? Instead, they ask, which risk gives me the greatest opportunity? That single question changes everything because every decision comes with a price. The risk of starting, or the risk of never starting, the risk of investing, or the risk of watching inflation quietly reduce your purchasing power, the risk of building something new, or the risk of depending entirely on someone else's decisions. The ultra-wealthy understand something that isn't often taught in schools. Every path carries risk. The only difference is whether that risk moves you closer to freedom or further away from it. And once you begin seeing risk through that lens, the way you make decisions changes forever. Before we continue, if you're enjoying this documentary and want more deep dives into the psychology of wealth, business strategy, and the habits behind lasting success, subscribe to Land and Wealth Stories and join us on this journey. Because the next lesson might completely change the way you think about money. Imagine two people standing in front of the exact same opportunity. They have the same information, the same amount of money, the same market conditions. Yet one walks away while the other builds a fortune. What made the difference? It wasn't intelligence, it wasn't luck. It was the way they thought. Most people look at an opportunity and immediately ask, what could go wrong? The ultra-wealthy ask a different question. What needs to be true for this to succeed? That small shift changes everything. Instead of allowing fear to make the decision, they gather information. They study the numbers. They ask better questions. And only then do they decide. This is why successful entrepreneurs often appear fearless, but they're not. They simply replace emotional decisions with informed decisions. They understand that uncertainty can never be eliminated. It can only be reduced. Before investing, they research. Before launching a company, they understand the market before hiring people. They look for character, not just talent. Every important decision follows the same pattern. Observe, learn, calculate, then act. Another difference is time. Most people think about next week. The ultra-wealthy think about the next 10 years. They're willing to make uncomfortable decisions today if those decisions create freedom tomorrow. That's why many successful entrepreneurs spend years building businesses that produce little immediate reward. They're not chasing quick wins. They're building long-term value. Perhaps the biggest difference of all? They don't confuse confidence with certainty. They know they'll never have every answer. They simply become comfortable making well-informed decisions without perfect information. Because waiting for certainty often means watching opportunity disappear. The people who build extraordinary wealth don't make perfect decisions every time. They simply make better decisions more consistently, and over time, those decisions compound into extraordinary results. Imagine you're standing at a crossroads. One path feels comfortable, the other feels uncertain. Most people choose comfort, not because it's the better option, but because their brain is trying to protect them. Psychologists call this loss aversion. Simply put, the pain of losing something feels much stronger than the joy of gaining something of equal value. That's why so many people hold on to jobs they no longer enjoy, delay starting businesses they've dreamed about, or avoid investments they've spent years researching. They're not making financial decisions, they're making emotional ones. The ultra-wealthy understand this psychological trap. They know fear is a normal human emotion, but they refuse to let fear become their financial advisor. Instead, they build systems that remove emotion from important decisions. They write down their investment rules. They define their business strategy before problems appear. They rely on research instead of headlines. And they ask one simple question before making major decisions. What does the evidence say? Not, how do I feel today? That distinction changes everything. Markets rise, markets fall, businesses succeed, businesses fail. But emotional decisions almost always produce emotional results. Disciplined decisions create consistent outcomes. Another psychological advantage the ultra-wealthy develop is patience. They understand that extraordinary wealth rarely arrives quickly. Instead of chasing instant rewards, they allow time to do the heavy lifting. Compounding doesn't just apply to money, it applies to knowledge, relationships, reputation, skills, and good decision-making. Each smart decision makes the next one slightly easier. Each lesson becomes another advantage. Eventually, the gap between those who react emotionally and those who think strategically becomes enormous. Because wealth is rarely built by one perfect decision. It's built by hundreds of disciplined decisions made over many years. And that's exactly what separates extraordinary outcomes from ordinary ones. The biggest surprise about the ultra-wealthy isn't that they take big risks. It's that they avoid far more risks than the average person. Most people imagine successful entrepreneurs constantly gambling on bold ideas. The reality is often the opposite. Before committing their money, their reputation, or years of their lives, they spend countless hours asking one simple question: what could go wrong? Not because they're afraid, but because they're prepared. They know every opportunity carries hidden dangers. The goal isn't to avoid risk. The goal is to avoid unnecessary risk. That's why many of the world's most successful business owners refuse to invest in industries they don't understand. They don't chase every trend. They don't buy every stock that's making headlines. And they rarely make decisions because everyone else is doing it. Instead, they stay within what legendary investor Warren Buffett famously called their circle of competence. They understand one important truth: saying no is often more valuable than saying yes. Every bad investment avoided then creates room for a better one. Every unnecessary expense avoided just protects future opportunities. Every emotional decision ignored strengthens long-term wealth. Another risk they avoid is debt without purpose. They understand that not all debt is the same. Some debt helps productive assets grow. Other debt quietly finances lifestyles that produce nothing in return. The ultra-wealthy know the difference. Perhaps their greatest advantage is patience. While others rush because they fear missing out, they wait, they research, they negotiate. And when the right opportunity finally appears, they act with confidence. Because confidence isn't built by moving quickly. It's built by being prepared. The truth is, the wealthy aren't fearless. They're selective. They understand that building lasting wealth isn't about taking more risks than everyone else. It's about taking the right risks, at the right time, for the right reasons. And that's a lesson worth far more than money itself. Most people see uncertainty as a warning sign. The ultra-wealthy often see it as an invitation to look closer. When markets become unpredictable, businesses slow down, or the economy enters difficult times, fear spreads quickly. People stop investing. They delay important decisions. They wait for things to feel safe again. But history tells a different story. Some of the world's greatest businesses were built during periods of uncertainty, not because their founders enjoyed difficult times, but because they understood something most people overlooked. Opportunity often hides where confidence disappears. When everyone is moving in one direction, the ultra-wealthy ask a different question. What is everyone else missing? That question has led to extraordinary fortunes. While competitors cut back on innovation, they invest in improving their products. While others stop hiring, they quietly recruit exceptional talent. While fear dominates the headlines, they focus on facts instead of emotions. This doesn't mean they ignore danger, far from it. They study every opportunity carefully. They measure potential rewards against possible losses, and they only move when the numbers make sense. That's the difference between gambling and calculated investing. One depends on hope, the other depends on preparation. The ultra-wealthy understand another important principle. Every economic cycle eventually changes. Booms don't last forever. Neither do recessions. Instead of reacting emotionally to every headline, they prepare for the next cycle before it arrives. That's why many successful entrepreneurs emerge stronger after difficult periods. Not because they predicted the future perfectly, but because they stayed prepared while everyone else became distracted. In the end, uncertainty doesn't create wealth. Preparation does. And when preparation meets opportunity, extraordinary businesses are often born. Before we move to the final lessons of this documentary, take a moment to subscribe to Land and Wealth Stories if you're enjoying this deep dive into wealth psychology and business strategy. Our goal isn't just to tell inspiring stories, it's to help you understand the thinking behind extraordinary success. Because once you change the way you think, you begin to change the decisions that shape your future. When people look at extraordinary wealth, they usually focus on the outcome, the successful company, the luxury headquarters, the headlines, the financial freedom. What they rarely see are the thousands of small decisions that made it possible. Because wealth is almost never built in one defining moment. It's built one decision at a time. One book read instead of 1 hour wasted. One smart investment instead of one unnecessary purchase. One difficult conversation instead of one avoided problem. One customer served exceptionally well instead of one quick sale. To most people, these decisions seem too small to matter. But the ultra-wealthy understand something incredibly powerful. Small decisions compound, just like money. Every good decision improves the next one. Every lesson reduces future mistakes. Every new skill creates another opportunity. Over time, those tiny advantages become impossible to ignore. This is why successful entrepreneurs become obsessed with systems instead of motivation. They don't rely on feeling inspired every morning. They build routines that keep them moving, even when motivation disappears. Reading becomes a habit, learning becomes a habit, saving becomes a habit, investing becomes a habit, thinking long-term becomes a habit. Eventually, discipline replaces willpower, and consistency replaces luck. The world's wealthiest people also understand the value of protecting their most important asset, not their money, their ability to make good decisions. Because capital can be lost, businesses can fail, markets can crash, but a disciplined mind can build wealth again. That's why they continue learning long after they've become successful. They know yesterday's knowledge won't solve tomorrow's problems. Every year, they become slightly wiser, slightly better, slightly more patient. Those improvements may seem invisible from day to day, but over decades, they create extraordinary results. Because lasting wealth isn't built by one brilliant decision. It's built by thousands of disciplined decisions, made consistently, long after everyone else has stopped paying attention. In the end, the greatest difference between the ultra-wealthy and everyone else isn't intelligence. It isn't education. And it certainly isn't luck. It's the way they think. Most people spend their lives asking, how can I avoid losing? The ultra-wealthy ask, how can I create lasting value? That one shift changes every decision that follows. They stop chasing quick wins. They stop trying to impress people. They stop measuring success by appearances. Instead, they focus on building assets, learning continuously, making thoughtful decisions, and solving problems that matter. Over time, those choices reshape their future. Because wealth isn't simply about money, it's about having options. The freedom to choose where you work, the freedom to choose who you work with, the freedom to spend time with the people who matter most. The ultra-wealthy understand something that many people discover too late. Money is a tool, not the goal. The real goal is freedom. Freedom created through discipline. Freedom protected by knowledge. Freedom sustained by wise decisions. That's why the journey to lasting wealth begins long before the first $1 million. It begins with a single decision. The decision to think differently, to question conventional beliefs, to learn continuously, and to act with patience when everyone else is rushing. The truth is, you don't need to become someone else to build wealth. You simply need to make better decisions than you made yesterday. One decision, one habit, one lesson at a time. Because extraordinary wealth isn't built overnight. It's built over years. By people who understand that success isn't about avoiding every risk. It's about understanding which risks are worth taking. If this documentary changed the way you think about wealth, business, and opportunity, then you've taken the first step. Welcome to Land and Wealth Stories. Here we explore the untold psychology behind extraordinary fortunes, business strategy, financial decision-making, and the timeless principles that shape lasting success. If you enjoyed this documentary, subscribe, turn on notifications, and join thousands of others who are learning to think differently about wealth. Because your financial future isn't decided by luck. It's shaped by the decisions you make starting today. Starting